Derby City Council Cabinet on Wednesday, the 11th of January. It's 4 p.m. in the council chamber here at Derby. Item 1 on the agenda is any apologies, and we have apologies from the Chief Executive Paul Simpson, from Andy Smith, and from Emily Feenan. Any other apologies to note? Councillor Ayres in the building, he'll be joining us, I think, anyway, so we can continue. I've got no late items that I'm aware of. Receipt of petitions, there are none to my knowledge. Identification of urgent items to which call-in will not apply. Item 8 falls into this category in that it is not subject to call-in because it will be ultimately dealt with at full council. I think Councillor Repton is aware and agreed to that process, so that's fine. Any declarations of interest on the agenda, please? No. The minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of December 2022 I'm content with. Any questions, comments, amendments? Seconded by Councillor Barker. They can be agreed, thank you. Item 7 is recommendations from Executive Scrutiny Board. Councillor Repton's not here, but I understand the meeting was held but went through without any recommendations to us today, so there are none. So key decisions then, item 8, council tax base for 23-24. Simon, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a standard report that you receive, and it forms the basis of the council tax resolution report that you'll consider at the end of February. So on the 1st of December, we have to calculate a council tax base for use in the following year. So that is a mixture of taking the number of properties in each band as notified by the valuation office, and then doing various adjustments, especially for things like single person discount, local council tax support, in order to come up with a number of equivalent properties. The national indicator for that is called a Band D equivalent, and that is used for setting our headline council tax. So you can see in paragraph 1.3, the Band D equivalent figure has gone up from 70,030 in 22-23, so the current year, up to 71,038 in 23-24, so just over 1,000 properties. Just to help comprehension, that means that obviously in setting the council tax, you'll have 1,000 properties times Band D as a result of the increased housing stock of the city, even before any council tax increase, and that is factored into our budget report. The report also details assumptions around the collection rates, and we've assumed a collection rate of 97.2%, and the collection rates are detailed in the budget report that is out for consultation at the moment, and I think we said there that we were being a bit more prudent, recognising the current cost of living crisis and potential for increased difficulty in maybe collecting debt as quickly as we would have without that. And then the final bit of the report is about the premiums that were agreed last year on empty properties. So the recommendation is for you to approve the council tax base for next year and the council tax changes for empty properties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. And effectively the urgency in this, and the reason for bringing it to this meeting rather than the council tax setting meeting, is to give the fire and the police authority details to be able to calculate and decide on their own tax base or contribution base, yeah?
That is correct, Chair, and it also is required for us to approve it prior to the setting of the council tax at the end of February. Thank you.
Okay, so any comments, questions? Anything to add, Councillor Smale, on your portfolio? Okay, so we have recommendations 2.1 to 2.3. Can they be agreed? Agreed, thank you. Okay, moving on then. Item 9 is the housing revenue account business plan for 23 through to 2052, a 30-year rolling plan. Yes. You're going to...
Sorry, Chair. The HRA business plan is the annual refresh of the 30-year housing revenue account business plan, and we're asking specifically recommending approval for the rent and service charge increase, but also the management maintenance fee, and also a delegation of Milestone House rent review that's been undertaken. So that element is excluded, and asking for delegation on that. In terms of the rent policy nationally, this was set several years ago at CPI plus 1%, which means that the maximum we're allowed is 11.1%. Due to the cost of living crisis, Department of Levelling Up went through a consultation process, and the result of that consultation was a cap set at 7% on social housing, with the exclusion of supported housing. In terms of the business plan, there's a number of major factors that we have had to consider in coming to the recommendations. The 7% cap means that the HRA over the 30-year business plan is losing a circa 100 million over 30 years from the 4.1 loss. In addition to the previous rent reform and the previous rent standard, which required a 1% reduction over 4 years, which meant in real terms that was a 13% loss, which equated, again over 30 years, to circa 290 million. Other significant factors that we've included or considered is the impact of decarbonisation. We have circa 12,500 properties, and at 20,000 a property, that equates to an investment of $250 million estimated. Right to buy losses, where we lose circa 175 units a year on average, which equates to about 5,250. We do replace, but that's how much we lose through right to buy. Our current reserve balance is 47, and obviously because of those considerations, it reduces significantly. Specifically in this report, we recommended and put together a report which sets rents at 7%, with the exclusion of obviously Milestone House. That would bring our rent, social rents for HRA, to about 57% of market rents, so still significantly below market. Service charges, we are recommending a 10% increase, capped at £1 per week per service charge, and freezing furniture packs, so no increase on that. We have got, within the capital programme, decarbonisation budget of circa 2 million, which, quoting the $250 million, is significantly short, but we're expecting government intervention on that. We are also looking to replace the right to buy losses to the value of an average of 100 units. So net loss will be 75 units. So it minimises the overall loss over 30 years to 2,250 units, which brings our reserve balance at the end of 30 years to 6 million, which is the recommended minimum reserve that we must maintain. And we achieve that by having to make savings of 1.1 million. We went through a consultation with customer voices made up of tenants, HRA tenants, and the recommendation, and bear in mind this was before the rent consultation outcome, they recommended or happy with a 7.5% increase. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hussain. I guess my understanding is that this has been to the Derby Homes Board and agreed at the Derby Homes Board, and they've considered some measures to mitigate the effects of it along the way in terms of extending certain maintenance periods and things.
That is an item we are looking at the moment. There's a briefing paper being done which will be presented, but this particular report does not take into account those measures at the moment. So potentially there could be further savings.
But Derby Homes have considered the...
They have
the
considered this, and they do also, the board recommends a 7% increase.
Okay. I think there's something else I was going to mention to you, but okay, I'll open it up for any questions or comments. Yes, Ruth.
Thanks. In paragraph 1.2 at the end, it refers to some reductions and changes as per paragraph 4.12.4. Sorry, and it doesn't actually exist. If you scroll down to page 8, it doesn't actually exist. So we go from 4.12.2 on to 4.13. There is no 4.12.4. It's supposed to be listing the reductions that are having to be made, so it is rather sort of a key part of the paper, I would have thought. Yeah. It would be nice.
I think Councillor Skelton is quite right. It's referencing a paragraph that isn't there. What Mr. Hussain has said is that over 3 years we've given the target to Derby Homes to reduce their costs down by £1,095,365 each year over 3 years. And that is reflected in the tables above in terms of the management and maintenance figures detailed in the report. What I think Mr. Hussain has also said is that we're looking at the component life of replacements that we do, which actually have a longer life than would have traditionally been the case. So better boilers, better heating, better roofs, etc. And there may be opportunity to reduce the replacement cycle, because I think as the portfolio holder might say, actually we got decent homes in Derby Homes many years ago, and we have been very proud that we've maintained that and invested in the stock over the period of time, and the report talks about some of the capital programme of that. So yeah, sorry for that omission in terms of referencing, but it is detailed in the tables let me just find it so I don't want to mislead. So you got the savings in paragraph 4.11.4, which talks about savings of 365, taking the management fee down to 11.813 million. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
With inflation, members will be aware that as part of our core budget report, I included a budget analysis of where inflation might go, which is saying in 24-25, we may have negative inflation as some of the macroeconomic conditions roll forward. I think we have to recognise in terms of Derby Homes, a lot of the inflation factors, whether it be materials, construction materials, which are still running at 14%, is we've probably been pessimistic that inflation remains for longer than maybe we'll see nationally in terms of the overall RPI figure. And each year we will, so the 730,000 on the management fee and the 1.529 million on the maintenance fee includes inflation as we see it at the moment. We will review that every year. But I think I just need to highlight to members the fact that the government has capped it at 7%, as Mr. Hussain has said, is that that has meant that will never be recovered in terms of the business plan. So it does lead to those 100 million over 30 years losses of what we could be investing in the stock if we'd kept our current policy of CPI plus 10%. Is there anything you want to add, Maz?
Yeah, just adding to what Simon said about the not recouping any retrospective shortfall. We have taken into account future rent increases as 6% for year 2 and then 3% beyond that, and that's what government recommendation is at 5% too, and we've increased that by those.
Councillor Shanker?
Thank you, Chair. It's really quite a damning report, if we're honest. The housing revenue account, as it says in the report, has enjoyed quite a good, strong financial position for a number of years. And we can talk about inflation being the driver for the performance of the housing revenue account and being the biggest concern. But that's not really the case. We've got to take this in context, as Mr. Hussain and Mr. Riley have both said. This is a 30-year financial plan, and there's lots of assumptions having to be made now, which could change that position over 30 years quite a bit. So hopefully, longer term, we would recover. The elephant in the room, though, and it touches in the report, but it's not being brought out by any questioning or any comments from the political leadership that I can see, and I know Roy agrees with me on this. It's the absolutely terrible policy of right to buy and the impact that's had in Derby and other cities for decades now. 26,500 properties circa, I think, Derby had prior to the right to buy, despite the efforts in building new properties and acquiring new properties over the last 10-15 years. There's just absolutely no way we can keep up with the pace of losing properties. And each time we lose a property, we sell a property, it has an impact, has a significant impact immediately and long term. I was actually shocked to read in the report our housing stock now sits at about 12,500. That's well over half the properties that this council owned or on behalf of our residents we've lost. And that's what's having the biggest impact on the housing revenue account. Absolutely nothing else. I think inflation, investment, much needed investment in getting to net zero, all of these could be managed and be a lot better, and we could invest more if we'd not lost the number of properties through the right to buy. And I don't begrudge anybody to become a homeowner. I think it's a good aspiration to have, and I'd recommend for anybody who wants to do that to aspire to become a homeowner. What I have got a problem with is the ridiculous amounts of discounts offered by this current government and previous Conservative governments. And you might snigger, Chair, but it's recently been, the discounts have been increased. I think it's 65 and 75% discounts being offered. I mean, and I know Councillor Smale talks about being, a very commercially driven council, but what business would let go of any of its assets with such significant discounts? What I'm asking, Councillor
Shanker, far from sniggering, I'm just waiting for you to come to a point of a question or a statement, or finish your statement, because we need to move on with business. So you've made your point.
Okay. I'm making my point, but I have got a question.
In relation to the right to buy, you've made your point. So if you want to move on and ask us a question or any queries, then
I will ask a question, and I assume it's either yourself or Councillor Webb, who has the ultimate responsibility for Derby Homes as the shareholder in the company. What I'd like to ask you is, in recent weeks and months, since the position of the housing revenue account has come to light, have you lobbied any ministers, anybody in government, asking for some change in policy and direction on the discounts being offered on the right to buy? Because that's, in a crux, that is the biggest cause of the impact on the housing revenue account. We can talk about lots of other issues which I'm sure will sort themselves out over a 30-year business plan, but if we continue to lose the number of properties through the right to buy with the levels of discounts that we continue seeing, the housing revenue account, I think, will crash a lot sooner than the 30 years business plan.
Okay, thank you. You made your point in relation to the right to buy. It's a national policy. We know there's lobbying on both sides in relation to the discounts offered, but the immediate problem, I would suggest, is still inflation this year and the difference between the level of increase that we're able to apply to keep us up to speed. But I'm sure Councillor Webb in this scenario might have something to say on the inflation particularly. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Shanker is right. We both agree that the right to buy discounts at current levels aren't sustainable, and we do see the issue of the number of properties leaving Derby Homes every year. We have targeted new build over the last 4.5 years so that we can try and rectify that. But the policy is that if we're doing new build, that we build for those properties that are most in need of within the city. And Councillor Shanker knows from previous discussions that 4-bedroom and above properties are the ones that are most needed in the city with the longest waiting list, and also single accommodation, which we are trying to rectify. Obviously, if you are building larger properties, it costs more to do, and we may not meet the target of matching the right to buy losses. But we are coming close, and that policy will continue so that we can provide properties that are most needed across the city. As has been mentioned, Derby Homes are also looking at other areas where money can be saved, and roofs, solar panels, thermal insulation, heating, that sort of thing is being looked at. Kitchen replacements, bathroom replacements, we're looking at longer periods. Roofs, we're looking at longer periods of replacement, not based on we just need to extend this. This is based on national evidence and local evidence, so that in some cases we will be looking at reducing the time scale for replacements, but on the majority we will be looking at increasing the time scale for replacements. It's good to know that Derby Homes, with its performance record, has the high 90%, and I'm talking 99% plus, satisfaction with the services that Derby Homes provide and the work that they do. So it is a good organisation, it is well managed, and I would commend this, although I know that there will be some damage from only increasing the rents by 7%. That as has been said, will not be recouped, but over a 30-year business plan, this can be worked on and levelled out, and I'm sure that the works that the board are doing at Derby Homes, that those savings will be able to be made with minimal impact on our tenants.
Yeah, just to pick up maybe the graph that is in 4.12, which obviously shows the right to buy forecast expenditure vis-a-vis the targets. So the report details that whereas we cannot stop the right to buys happening, we wish to invest in replacement stock of, on average, I think 535 houses over the next 5 years. And a couple of years ago, lobbying by the sector, which we were part of, as well as Derby Homes as an Elmo, gave more flexibility that you could use right to buy receipts. I think it used to be for 2 years, and now it's 5 years. And you can see that is where that graph has been there. So within the constraints of a national right to buy system, we've got more flexibility than we have had previously. And I suppose the other bit about influencing the decision around the rent rise is that councils were able, along with Elmos, to respond to the consultation on the rent increases that the government issued in the summer by October, and we made a joint response to that consultation at the time. So there was lobbying about the rent increases and everything else, and the government eventually settled on 7% out of their options, which is what this report says. So we have been feeding in where possible into any national consultations on these issues. Thank you.
Okay, so you just had your answer. Briefly.
Thank you. I've got one further question, but apologies if I've missed it, but my question was, as you were keen for me to ask a question, was specifically about whether we'd lobbied government on the right to buy discounts. And
Sorry, so yes, you've just had a partial answer from Mr. Riley in relation to what we've done in relation to that, but I'm sure our sitting MPs have it, and our future MPs will have it at the top of their priority list to lobby the government in the future. So
again, I'm not sure what's quite funny about this.
You've got another question?
I'm sure Councillor Riley didn't talk about lobbying on the right to buy.
We don't have a councillor.
Mr. Riley,
do you have another question, Councillor?
And the second question was, so if you'd answer the first one, I'd appreciate it, but if you haven't got an answer and you haven't lobbied government on right to buy, just please say that. My second question, in the report in 5.1 and 5.2, it talks about a customer voice group representing tenants. Just a simple question on how many tenants were involved in that group, please.
I don't know that off the top of my head. Whether Councillor Webb does, we can get you that detail and we'll supply it to you.
Yeah, in terms of the consultation that we undertook, there were between 7 and 10 tenants that attended.
Sorry, between 7 and 10 tenants.
Yeah, I didn't count, I'm sorry, but it was a small group.
Okay, there's your answer. Okay, unless there's any other comments or questions, then Cabinet, we've got recommendations 2.1 to 2.6. Can that be agreed? Thank you. Moving on then to budget and framework and policy framework, how we've done that one. Contract and financial procedure matters. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. So this is again the standard report that we receive. The report details some developments to improve the offer at Springwood Leisure Centre, spin bikes and a change of use of the squash courts to a multi-use studio scheme, which will hopefully improve uptake and activity, which is an important part of our keeping people active. There's also in this report a acceptance of funding for winter discharge money that Theresa Coffey announced when she was a health secretary. And again, that funding is both money coming to us to help with the winter pressures and discharges, and then there's a separate allocation coming to health as part of that. And I think we all know from the current press coverage that the systems of the health system, the social care system, nationally and locally, is under significant strain. There's some welcome funding in here in respect of the Youth Offending Service to expand better practice in early intervention, and the report details the potential beneficiaries of it, and again, that complements some really good work that we have in our Youth Offending Service that operates across the city. And then the report is asking you to submit a bid for home upgrade grants. So this is a mixture of insulation and trying to cut energy loss. This is targeted to those who are primarily not on the gas system, so potentially people who may be heating their houses for electric storage heaters, park homes and everything else. We're estimating that there's probably about 500 to 600 properties in the city that would be eligible who are outside of the sort of current ability to heat their homes with gas. It's not a precise number, but if that was to be received, again, it will complement our energy support that we give to the private sector, alongside, as Councillor Webb has said in the previous item, the investment we're making in energy efficient homes for social housing. So I don't think the report has much I need to add beyond maybe just highlighting those as the areas, and the recommendation as normal is to sort of to note and accept funding, and where necessary to delegate authority to the relevant officer in consultation with a member to progress the items in this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So there by a number of welcome grants that we're being asked to receive, and potential bids for further grants that we're being asked for permission to do, and some delegated authorities around that. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, very pleased to see the money in relation to Springwood Leisure Centre in my Oakwood ward included in this document. We've analysed something that used to work and used to have a lot of demand, doesn't have the demand that's there anymore. We found something that, as far as I'm aware, is very popular in other areas, and we've decided to bring that to the Leisure Centre to enhance the health and leisure offer that the Leisure Centre brings. I think that's absolutely the kind of thing we should be doing, and it has my full support. Thank you.
Utilising 106 monies, of course. Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Skelton.
Just on 4.5.4, it sort of talks about obviously targeting the money to those obviously most in need, but when it's talking about the lower super output areas, does that mean it's going to be just for certain areas in this geographical areas in the city, or is it going to be anywhere in the city, providing people meet the criteria in their household?
I believe it's the nature of the house, not the area, that's the dictation that dictates where it's going to be applied. But Mr. Riley?
There's a couple of, if you want to call it, gateways here. It talks about that the household income needs to be below 31,000, and obviously household income is one of the contributors towards deprivation. We also know from our understanding of the housing stock that a lot of, if you want to call it, the properties that would be eligible, in the old case it would have been the prefabs, and obviously they've generally been dealt with previously, but houses which don't have access to the gas network, to electric storage heaters, tend to be in our more deprived areas with energy costs. So I think this is where it says that you need a certificate of D, E, F or G, which obviously we would like to, for our net zero aspirations or whatever, make sure that is C or above, so it's addressing that. And it also talks about varying indices of multiple deprivation income decile areas 1 to 3. So I think we would know inherently, if we were to do almost a thermal map of the city, where these properties should be and where we should target it. And there is an alignment to obviously those wards which are more deprived. But it doesn't mean that a particular property elsewhere is automatically excluded, but this is where we'll be targeting our support. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Councillor Pearce.
Thanks, Chair. Just a slight amendment to item 4.2, the LTA award of funding. The LTA have been around with our leisure partners and the contractor, and Alistair Recreation Ground will cost too much of the funding to carry out the works, so that's been taken out of the system. That will be amended.
I understand that's to do with the seriously poor condition of the facility.
It is.
We'll have to look at other ways of dealing with that one, yeah?
Yep, that's right.
So with that addendum, if you like, query, unless there's anything else, we have recommendations to put. Sorry, Roy, yeah?
Just to say on the home upgrade grant that we didn't have the time, because of the time scale of the grant, to do a wider public and stakeholder consultation, but felt it more important to get the grant than to delay things even further and wait for further grant funding. So the home upgrade grant has been done without public consultation, but with consultation in the sector. Can I just welcome the adult social care discharge funding? That will be really useful, as we know the NHS are under pressure at the moment, and anything that can be done to remove the issue of delayed discharge, which we haven't suffered in Derby for a good number of years until just recently during the COVID pandemic. So it will enhance the work that we currently do in supporting the NHS to get patients out of hospital and into the community.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's any other questions or comments, with recommendations 2.1 through to 2.11, can they be agreed? Agreed, thank you. I believe that completes the business of Council Cabinet today. Thank you very much for your attendance.